Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer, and welcome back to Zwift Fitness Journey. Today we are in the rain in Watopia. It's also in the rain in Washington as well. Tis the season, I suppose. I'm gonna just do a simple route that I haven't been on as of yet. I might do a couple laps around it, presumably, and the big thing, though, is it's been announced that Pro Cycling Manager 2021 is on its way, and we're going to talk about the new features in PCM 21. Let's go ahead and get straight into it. For Pro Cycling Manager 2021, the upcoming release, let's start with good news, is June 3rd, so we are already less than 2 months away from the release of the next edition of PCM. Also, the information contained here within is all available on the Steam store page for PCM 21. You can add it to your wish list now, though it is not posted for pre-order just yet. I don't have any additional information that is not already available to you. With that, let's take a look at what is new for PCM 21 this year. Well, first little piece is they're up to 80 teams now. So with Continental and Continental Pro making up roughly 40 of those. That's about 40 Continental teams now. That's an increase, I'd say. I don't know what the exact number was for PCM 20, but I'm assuming it was 70 to 75. But as for the new features, well, this list is a little thin. One of the reworked things, and probably the biggest feature of the year, is a new objective system. We're going to go back into that one in a moment. And then they have European Championships and some additional national teams that didn't exist in the game previously. That is a new feature, but it's kind of just an add-on. I mean, we already have the World Championships. Now they're just adding in the European Championships following the same coding format. They've added in some new licensed brands, as in equipment, into the game. There's improved Peloton behavior, so improvements to the AI. They do that every year, though, and it's usually pretty minimal. And one of the other features that I'm hoping turns out well, because I do use it these long careers, is that the quick simulations are more like real races. So they reworked the quick sims. Now let me start with one element of bad news. For the second year running, Pro Cyclist mode is, or at least it appears to be, completely untouched. No change whatsoever to Pro Cyclist mode for the second year in a row. You may have heard one of my previous discussions regarding my hopes for PCM, that this was going to be their first time since 2015 that they were going to do some sort of major update. But that discussion was a little while back, and in that discussion it was noting that A, we have a small development team in Cyanide. B, this is their cash cow. This is their moneymaker. This game literally was, the first few editions of this was the only thing they did, and then they slowly branched out to do other games. But then going further into that, they had 2 titles that were both releasing here over the last 2 months. Blood Bowl and, what was the name of the werewolf game that was pretty bad. It was not well received at all. I was hoping that the release of those was going to come at a time that one or both of the teams involved in finishing those up, the members of those teams, would come back over to Pro Cycling Manager and help implement, polish some major new feature for PCM 21. Didn't happen. Did not happen. It's been minor stuff again. 5 years running with only minor updates to the game. That is massively disappointing, first and foremost. I'll get that out of the way. It is massively disappointing that they have done that. But let's hope that now that those titles are done, they will be able to implement some major new features. Now, the only thing about that, though, is I did learn through one of those French interviews. I sat through one of them with translation. It was a broken translation, so I didn't get perfect information out of it, perfect details out of it. Their cycle, how this game operates in terms of a team.
is only a limited number of members of that Cyanide team have been working on PCM in recent years. They tend to focus on their release in June. They'll focus on bugs till about July, as in not long. They fix a couple of things. They tweak a couple of things. They do like one update. And then that's it. And then the game is set aside. Then they wait for roughly 3 months from that release. So about September. And my timetable could be off ever so slightly. Roughly 3 months of just gathering community feedback. I don't think they're really bothering with English feedback on that. I think they're getting strictly French feedback and nothing more. So there could be a different set of feedback coming from the French audience as there is from the English audience. So anyway, then from September to November, they're planning out their new edition. They plan what they want to do with the upcoming year. They take that feedback. They start with their board and they eliminate down what can they do, short term, long term, what would they like to do, and then plan what they're going to aim for and go for. And then from November to January, I believe it is, they work on those new features. And then from January to April, they're hashing everything out and making it work and function and operate as a game should. And then from April to June, they're testing and making the game work. In terms of that team size, the team grows from that November to either January or April-ish. That's where the extra members come over from other titles in the studio and work, and they have that larger team for that, anywhere from 2 to 5 months. But otherwise, it's bare bones the rest of the year. It's a very small team. I don't know. They never said how many, but we could be talking about 4 or 5 members of the studio is it for the vast majority of the year. At least 7 months of the year, if not up to 8 or 9 or even 10 months of the year. We're talking about a skeleton crew working on Pro Cycling Manager. Hence, we haven't seen much happen for a while. But that chunk, that little period of time, that 5 months or so, where they do work with a larger team, that's where the magic could happen. And we just haven't seen that magic since 2015. Of course, that magic was the introduction of Pro Cyclist mode itself. The new objective system. So they've revised the objective system to make it more realistic and to offer you more freedom. You can now set any number of objectives for all your riders. The objectives will certainly affect their fatigue, but you'll have to constantly reconsider your choices during the season, because unforeseen circumstances, fatigue, calendar changes, etc., will affect the morale of your riders. So this is linked more closely with the morale system that they previously added last year. We've also developed a new AI to manage riders' objectives and to improve allocation of leaders in the season's important races, meaning more divided up. Noticed a lot this year that it's not well organized, and you can get one race with 30 phenomenal climbers at one Grand Tour, and then you get like 2 at the other Grand Tours. This new system also involves changes to the condition and fatigue system. Race types taken into account in terms of fatigue management, with some races and conditions more demanding than others. Classics with cobbles, weather, competing for ranking in the general classification, in multi-day races. So now we have a varying level of fatigue based on race type, based on race length, based on weather, based on how you actually are involved in the race. I like that. It does mean, though, that the days of setting your planner on January 2nd and being done for the year, that might be done. We might be past that point now. It's more dynamic as a system now. That's a good thing. That is a really good thing. And I say bring it on. And especially the fact that we can now add more objectives and not just tie it to 1/3 of the year. For those who follow my career mode, Pavel Rodriguez, we're going for the Triple Crown. We're going for all 3 Grand Tours, but you can't select all 3 Grand Tours because 2 of them fall into the same calendar chunk. 2 more bullet points here. All this provides more dynamic gameplay. Based on a provisional calendar, you may need to revise your plans during the year, i.e. cancel an important race at the last moment before a major objective because your rider has already reached his fatigue limits. I'm sure the system for that is still the same. We're still talking about 50 points of tiredness being your fatigue limits and the fitness levels. I'm assuming all of that's still the same. I think what's happening here, though, is we have that more dynamic system that's impacted. So as things such as weather changes, and we're going to come back to that one because that's, to me, that's the other big feature this year. Instead of a generic one-size-fits-all, it's now a dynamic system. Fatigue and fitness will vary over the course of the year, apparently. So, meaning it requires closer monitoring. Final bullet point, improvements to the AI's condition fatigue management, especially regarding fitness for mid-season Tour de France and end-of-season La Vuelta and World Championships / Classics objectives. This one I really love. Next new feature, the other major new update, is the European Championships and national teams. We've added the European Championships, online races, and time trials as well in the season calendar. These 2 races work like the World Championships, i.e. by national selection. This means distinctive jerseys for the winners, like the World Championships, improved AI for national selections for the World Championships and European Championships, more realistic criteria for building teams and fixing problems with the old system, as in certain leaders wouldn't take part in an event even though the course suited them. New national teams in the database to ensure there are enough teams for the European races, and then redesigned national teams page. Other than a new tab being added having to do with the national teams, a few European-based national teams, so some of the smaller European nations, probably some of the Eastern European nations, I would think, are now added in and playable. All that is 2 more dates on the calendar. 1 time trial and 1 more race date. So for that to be a major feature, 2 days on the calendar is a major feature. More realistic weather. Weather has a greater impact on fatigue and your rider's morale. So we've seen that connection made over the objective portion. Certain races are known to involve a level of risk tied to weather, like, say, Paris-Roubaix. This now has an effect on riders and their fatigue. In career mode, weather is now consistent in stage races, though it's not consistent in real life. We've used real meteorological data to create realistic weather from day to day. The next one, new brands, official equipment added. For me, this is such a tiny thing. For one thing, the database people are obviously on top of this, and they're adding these things in. Also added a range of official roadside elements of the tour, kilometer arches, banners, etc. Good for modding community that those are now there, but really not going to change things much. And then finally, a few miscellaneous things. Improved peloton behavior in sprints, especially in finishes with mini bends. This is one thing that I've been talking about for a long time, is when you go around a corner, right now the way the game is set is whether you're on the inside or outside does not matter. And it's going to hold the line. And there is no attack. There is no use of red bar. There's nothing happening on corners. Everything just kind of locks in and it goes through it. Apparently they've improved this. I would love to see if being on the inside of a corner actually matters now, that you're going to go through the corner quicker than you are around the outside of a corner. We'll see what they've actually done with that. Continuing our efforts to improve the manager interface, we have redesigned the teams page and added new statistics for riders, appearances in top races, race day details, and results. It's a little update to the UI. They added a couple columns to one of the tabs. Improved quick simulations for more realism. This is the other big one for me. I think there's 3 things that I'm looking at as being key this year. The objective system, the weather system, and improved quick simulations. Improved results and consideration of cobbles, improved hilly classics, consideration of the hill characteristic, and settings to improve the realism of results such as Flèche Wallonne, Liège, Bastogne, Liège. Stage 21 taken into account in Grand Tours for added realism. Flat stages that occur on the last day of a race, such as Tour de France, now end in a sprint finish, meaning some breakaways not going to go and win the thing. Improved gaps in time trial stages. Gaps are now a little larger for improved realism when simulating these stages. So all they did was increase the gap size slightly. Rule added to allow the best pro continental teams to receive an invitation to all World Tour races for the best, and all races taking place on a single day for runner-up. Modders can adjust this parameter in the database, meaning the top team from the previous year, who didn't necessarily get promoted, now is going to have more invitations to bigger races. So if I was going to grade these features, the new objective system, I'd give it a B+. It's a good thing. It's a welcome thing. The chance to pick all 3 Grand Tours as your target for the year is pretty awesome. European Championships, national teams for me, C-. It's so minor, and depending on how they implement it, that grade could be higher or lower. The new licensed brands, D. What am I getting from that? I don't even pay attention to that at all. Quick simulations, more like real races. Go B- on that one. I'm looking forward to seeing what that's going to do. More realistic weather. Sounds like what they're actually doing is they're just adding the fatigue and riders' morale element to that and tying that into the coding of how the fatigue and morale work. So it's actually kind of a minor thing, but it's more into the inner webbing of everything that's going on, and that does make the game more dynamic. And because of how that's going to affect the objectives and everything else along the way, it has a wider impact on everything going on. So I'll give that a B.
That was a really hard ride, as short as it was, but we got through it. You can definitely see I'm pushing out wattage that I was definitely not pushing out before. I think lowering the seat a little bit has made a ton of difference instead of stretching and having to fully extend every pedal stroke. That little bit less, and it's allowing me to stay on top of the pedals a little more and not make that extra motion to go from a slight bend to a full extension. And just that little bit is making a massive difference. Well, anyway, shorter ride today, but filled it after that one. I'm still having the very, very long week following the late part of last week, just trying to catch up and get myself feeling better. The ear thing from the vaccine is slightly still bugging me, but it's mostly better. The getting kicked hard twice, not to count the other elbows and kicks, but one of those has healed up. The other one isn't so bad now, so, I'm getting back to okay, but not feeling great. And I'm hoping 2 days from now, for the next ride, I can go longer, push harder. I might try to do an hour-long group ride if I can manage it. That is going to do it for this episode, though. Tell me what you thought of PCM 21 and the releases. Obviously, I wasn't too high on it myself, but as I did state at one point, anytime you could take a good game and make it better, it's still a step in the right direction. And as long as they keep doing that, I'll keep coming back, sadly. Even if it's just cash cow and the updates are so minor, it still gets a little bit better. And I love it. What can I say? PCM addict, I suppose. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button. See you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.